In this video, we're going to review our study on Sihon.
Hero, my God, to thee, hero to thee. Even though it be a cross, thou praisest me.
Okay, so let's take some time to review our study on Sihon, the king of the Amorites. During our study on Sihon, we learned that he represents Satan, the Antichrist, who will be destroyed so that a great multitude of God's elect can inherit the kingdom of God, which is typified as the land of Canaan, in accordance with God's promises to Abraham's seed, who represents Christ, according to Galatians chapter 3. Sometime near the year 1479 BC, King Sihon conquered Moab and became the dominant ruler in the land of Canaan. And 12 years later, in the year 1447 BC, Israel came out of the land of Egypt after God destroyed the army of Pharaoh. And at that time, God commanded Israel to go into the land of Canaan to possess the land. However, because Israel feared the Amorites and the giants in the land, they refused to enter the land in accordance with God's command. As a result, God punished Israel by making them suffer for 40 years in the wilderness in order to purge out the rebels. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, God warns us that this rebellion and this turning to false gods by Israel is an example to the New Testament church. And it was during this time of rebellion, God destroyed 23,000 Israelites in one day because they were worshiping the gods of Moab. But wonderfully, at the end of that 40 years, God executed his program to bring the believers back into the land of Canaan by destroying Sihon, the king of the Amorites, as well as Og, the last remnant of the giants. During that time of destruction, terror filled the land after reports went out about the destruction of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, Sihon, and Og. This terror caused believers like Rahab the harlot and the Gibeonites to cry out to God for mercy. Rahab and the Gibeonites represent the true believers who will be saved during the Great Tribulation after leaving the church. And so the year 1407 BC was a time when Israel, the 12 tribes, inherited the land as they destroyed the other 31 kings that occupied the land. These 12 tribes remind us of the 12 tribes that are mentioned in Revelation chapter 7, where God says that they were sealed before the Great Tribulation began. And after they were sealed, God informs us that they would become a great multitude that no man can number, thus reminding us of God's promise to Abraham. In Genesis chapter 15, God informs us that the 12 tribes would become like the stars of heaven, which no man could number. He uses that same language in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, where he informs us that they would become a great multitude, which shall come out of great tribulation. But as in the case of the destruction of Sihon, God had to destroy the Antichrist, Satan, so that the believers could go in and possess the land. And when we go to Daniel chapter 7, God explains how he will destroy Satan, the Antichrist. In verse 11, we read of Daniel 7. I beheld, and then because of the great words which the horn spake, that is the little horn, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beast, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. So we see that as in the case of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, God destroyed the beast so that they would no longer have dominion over the true believers. And as we learned in Daniel chapter 8, this little horn was given rule over the believers in the church for a period of 2,300 days. That is, from 1994 to the year 2000. And in the year 2000, God's elect began to cleanse their temples, remove their high places and idols, to indicate that they are no longer following the doctrines of the church, which teach that we can become saved by accepting Jesus, being baptized in water, or any other work. Returning to Daniel chapter 7, we read that the saints came to take the kingdom and possess it forever. Daniel chapter 7, verse 17, we read, These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So just as the 12 tribes destroyed Sihon, Og, and 31 other kings that ruled in the land of Canaan, God is informing us here that the saints of the kingdom will take it and possess it after the beast, Satan, the Antichrist, has been destroyed. Does the Bible provide any evidence as to when this final destruction will occur? Well, as we learned in our study on Sarah's timeline, we found that God is using Sarah to represent the Jerusalem above, as well as the mother of the children of promise. In other words, as we look through our chart, we see that it is focused on key events involving God's promises to Abraham. And one of the more salient dates, as we've been studying, is the year 1407 BC. It was the time when Israel went to take possession of the land, at which time Sihon, Og, and all the inhabitants of the land were destroyed except Rahab and the Gibeonites. We also see in this chart the birth of Jacob in the year 2007 BC, and we know that Jacob represents all of God's elect, who are the children of promise, as we read in Romans chapter 9. Moreover, the chart shows that God is emphasizing the number 23 because it indicates that the believers cannot inherit the kingdom of God until God executes judgment on the church and the unsaved of the world. And if we're on the right track, this chart is showing us that Christ may return in the year 2017/18, at which time the new Jerusalem will be revealed and this world will be destroyed, as we read in Revelation chapter 21. We also learned that there's a possibility that this judgment could come during the Feast of Tabernacles. Because in Deuteronomy chapter 31 and Nehemiah chapter 9, God associates the Feast of Tabernacles with the destruction of Sihon. But in Zechariah chapter 14, God warns the family of Egypt that if they do not keep the Feast of Tabernacles, they will not receive rain, which is necessary for salvation. So in this regard, we are living in a time when the latter rain is going out to help us correct our doctrines, to help us turn away from idols, which represents works gospels, which according to Revelation 9 is identified with the worship of devils. But if we are like Rahab and the Gibeonites, we will hear this message of terror and we will turn away from spiritual fornication in the hopes that God will save us before Judgment Day comes, possibly in the year 2017.
Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, even though it be a cross that